Welcome everybody to This Week in X, where we talk about one of the new X-Men issues out the week of the 27th of January, 2021. In this case, that issue is Wolverine number 9, and I'm here with my friends, Fariha, Tyler, and Harry to have that discussion. And fair warning, this is a full spoiler discussion. We're not going to remember all of Wolverine's history. He can't even do that. But we are going to get into full spoilers for X-Men and much of the rest of the Marvel Universe. So without any further preamble, we're going to dive in. So for Wolverine number 9, as we do, let's start with our initial reactions, and then we will dig in more deeply to everything about this issue. Tyler, what is your gut reaction on Wolverine number 9?
I was dreading this issue after the mishandling of Wolverine's characterization in recent issues from Percy, but I'm kind of glad that Wolverine is slightly more in character here. Maybe because he hardly had to interact with anyone in this issue. Kuber's art is always good, in my opinion, and in this case, it is also good. It is not his best art, though. So I give this 2.5 Cyanide tooth out of 5.
Oh my God.
Here we go.
Harry, what is your opinion here?
So, like Tyler, I have not been anticipating this issue one bit. So it might be because of those way lowered expectations, but I actually enjoyed this a decent amount. I think a lot of that is because I think this is actually some pretty good Kubert art. As of late, I think this is just one where I just really enjoyed the art and kind of the pacing of it and just kind of the different setting. I don't really see Kubert draw this kind of thing a lot. And, here, I think Tyler might be on something where Wolverine doesn't really talk to anybody, which might go a long way. But it's still just really generic, and the writing just doesn't really do it for me. I don't think there are any egregiously cheesy, like try hard 90s lines in this issue, which I think goes a long way. But so I would give it 2.5 Kingpins out of 5. Just gonna do characters.
I can't believe this is a thing now, but here we are. Fariha, what did you think of this issue?
So I hated this issue. I'm going to just be out there because the issue fundamentally doesn't work, and I hate it when an issue a story. I don't know whether it's fiction or not. Fundamentally doesn't work. Wolverine is the most recognizable face in the history in the Marvel 616. He's the tiniest man without any makeup, without any way to shape or form to change him. They sent him as an undercover into an auction site where they had no idea who's going to be there or who's not. Freaking Kingpin was there. And how is he not recognized? So the fact that it doesn't work on the main premise level, I'm giving it half a Wolverine claw out of 5.
I thought the exact same thing. I'm like, everyone here knows him, and he's not like.
This is the auction where his severed hand is being sold, and you think they're not gonna recognize him? He's known as being stinky. He's known as being short, and then the doorman didn't recognize. I mean, come on.
We're gonna get into this. This is gonna be our first point of discussion because I do want to talk about this. So, okay. So, to me, look, you've heard me say in past episodes, that Madripoor to me just seems like the boring place you go when you don't have a plot for your comic book. Like, it doesn't excite me at all. And on top of that, to go to Madripoor and then go to the most boring plot device of them all, the auction for random crap that supervillains want, which literally was just in another Marvel comic book like 2 weeks ago. I'm just like, there's just nothing happening here whatsoever. It's like a bye week of an issue, but we still had to have it drawn. And I think there are positive things about it. I do not think it's like a total loss because I think some things are interesting in the art and there's some character interesting things. But the primary story here, I just could not roll my eyes any harder in boredom. I want to start out from this topic, which clearly has divided the panel right from the start, which is this. If this was DC Comics, Superman would put on some glasses that look a lot like the ones that I'm wearing right now, and nobody would know that he was Superman, because that is the conceit of DC Comics, because they truck a lot more in secret identities, whereas the Marvel characters who have secret identities tend to more often cover their whole faces. Not all the time, but it's generally thought of as a very DC trope, right? So I found myself also having the feelings for it as having of like, about the eye patch. But would we say anything if this was Superman? And to the point of Fariha here, one of the top fans of Kamala Khan in the universe, she just wears a little domino mask. Doesn't everybody know that it's Kamala Khan? Like, do you have the same level of rage, Fariha, about Miss Marvel that you do about Wolverine here at the auction?
No, because everyone knows who she is. Everyone who's close to her, when she comes out to them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we know." Like they're always like, "Oh, yeah, we know." Like, you know, she's the only one who thinks she has a secret identity. Most of the people who have seen her from far away don't know that.
Okay.
Like, you know, but the people who she is close to always can tell she is Kamala Khan. That's one of the reasons I have so much problem with Saladin Ahmed when the mom forgot. But another day for that. Yeah. But then this is, so eye patch is just not enough because he's also the shortest and the stinkiest human being or the mutant in the world.
And he's very distinct hair. Like Clark Kent, you know, at least like slick it back.
And my thing is like to be clear,
if you were in Marvel 1616 universe, you're like, oh yeah, that's Wolverine. Yeah, that's it. It's the same way if we saw Tom Cruise, if like a short man running super fast, we'll be like, that's Tom Cruise right there.
And
so
I wasn't bothered by this. It didn't like change I just thought it was kind of goofy, but like he's also wearing Patch wears a white tux. Even like that makes you even more conspicuous than the people dressing up nice. And I hope that maybe Percy just like, yeah, it just makes no sense and we're going with it. I can get on that level, but it was so odd, you know?
No, it is
I hope
odd.
that is the case though.
But I mean, we sort of got that part out of the way when we discussed last issue. Like, why are you sending Patch as undercover to Madripoor? Because everyone knows in Madripoor kind of knows Patch is Wolverine. So that doesn't make sense. And we sort of got it out of the way. But to some points is that I think Kingpin knew immediately that he was Wolverine. So I don't think that so. For me, I was like, okay, yeah, he knew. So
the Hellfire kids are there also.
Yeah, but you know, they're kids. They don't recognize all adults look the same to them.
So, okay, you know, fine.
But anybody over the age of 25, they all just blend in.
But
ageist.
But the other thing I kind of want to point out is like, in that splash page where you have all the different characters, like, and Wolverine is walking up to the bar to order drinks. There is another Wolverine on the lower left.
Yes. Yes.
So that means that's how his Patch persona might work, because there's another Wolverine there.
There's two Wolverines.
Hubert's saving it all for us.
Like, who is that Wolverine then? Oh my God! Now my mind is blown again. Tyler is blowing my mind this week.
Tyler, you're really bringing everything.
Yeah, now I love this issue because that's the problem is solved now. I'm like, okay, what the hell?
Yeah, so you know, people do.
Well, you know, if I mean, I don't care a lot about this particular topic, if I'm being completely honest, but I think the way that in my head it works, just so I don't bang my head against the screen as I'm reading this, is that Patch is such a specific, iconic figure in Madripoor that it's almost like he's equally iconic to Wolverine. To us, Wolverine is iconic because he's Wolverine, but in Madripoor, it's like, it's Patch. And it's almost kind of like, yeah, I know, I look like Wolverine a little bit. I don't know, because I don't remember it. I have to get to that in my reread. I'm pretty close to it. But I don't know. That's how it works in my head, that they just think it's funny that Patch looks like Wolverine. That's my read. But let's get out of Madripoor for a second. I think the most interesting thing about this issue is the time it spends in flashback to Wolverine and Maverick and Sabretooth on Team X. It introduces this really nice concept that Wolverine and Maverick are kind of the keeper of each other's soul, because they don't want to become Sabretooth. And Sabretooth lives for this kind of resetting, this kind of factory reset they get between missions, because it just lets him be as violent as he wants to be. And there's this implication, never, I don't think, totally on the page here, is that maybe that's what enables the Sabretooth we know today. Like if you let somebody kind of come out of the gate and be cruel so many times in repetition that it leaves a mark on their soul and they become crueler always, even though we know historically he's always been that cruel. But just stick with me here. And Wolverine and Maverick kind of say to each other, I'm not going to let you slip away. And even though we've seen a lot about their partnership and their teamwork in the past, I just think this hit a lot different than a lot of past Wolverine stories. This is a little bit less like bro code, soldier code, and a little bit more intimate and emotional than that for me. I don't know. Tyler, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, on that point, I really think that it develops the friendship between these two characters a little bit more. In terms of placing it where in his history, the data page mentioned Professor Thornton, and that is the Weapon X guy, right? So it has to happen around that era. I'm not familiar. I don't remember anything about Team X, even though I think this is something which has been created before. So so I couldn't place it very well in terms of the timing, but but I enjoyed this this relationship between Maverick, or this added layer of relationship between Maverick and Wolverine.
I feel like Percy is trying to get into some more like male intimacy or more intimate like kind of friendships and relationships with in his books. It's just like with the agents and the other issues, it doesn't really land because they're just spouting like try hard lines back and forth. But like this works better. Like I kind of wish the issue was more about like the flashback between him and Maverick. It did actually reach like my interest was piqued. So I was like, okay, I want to see more of this rather than the 200th villain auction this week, you know?
So I wasn't sure like what time in his life this was happening. So like this whole thing with Wolverine, and seems like you guys are also unsure about that. Yeah. Because to me, it's like if he already developed this method of trying to hold on to some memory or trying to hold on to some level of soul, he doesn't seem to use that very often. Like, why not use it more often with other people? Like, you know, he's just like, this was just a one person that he had this with. I don't know. I mean, is this the first time he ever had this like code with another person so they can wake each other up?
I mean, there's 1,000 Wolverine stories that flash back to I don't know.
I mean, that's one of the reasons. It just because I read maybe too many Wolverines, so I'm like, oh, it's just another one of those. This bro he lost.
But in this flashback sequence, I think Sabretooth asked a really interesting question that is relevant to Krakoa today. You know, it's like he's saying that is there redemption for people who had done atrocious things in the past, but has a change of heart or realignment of moral compass, right? I mean, we have characters, we have villains who are living in Krakoa, who is like, you know, I mean, Darkern is one, one example of such a character, right? So, you know, I mean, he asked that question. I mean, he didn't ask the follow-up question, is as in like, you know, if there is redemption, how should they redeem themselves? So, you know, I feel like that was quite an interesting thing to put in here because of who is living on Krakoa now.
Oh, maybe Gabby is his clone.
Well, I mean, anyway. So having poked around in my own comic guide while we were having that conversation, I think the thing that I'm willing to say is that generally when they're having a flashback and they're in those black and yellow suits that they're wearing there, that is pre-adamantium, generally. And that if they are not in the black and yellow suits, but they're still hanging out with each other, then that is post-adamantium. And I'm sure someone in the comments like Ray or one of the people who really knows continuity really well will probably correct me. But that's where I'm going to begin with this explanation. So now coming back to our auction. What do you think about all these things that are at the auction? Black Widow's tooth, Spider-Man's tombstone.
You know, that's from Craven's Hunt, right? Last time.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, some of them are ostensibly a little bit useful because you can like get some DNA off them or something.
Yeah.
what do you need? Who needs Spider-Man's tombstone? I mean, nobody's killed him.
Yeah.
Nobody's done it. So it's not a great trophy unless you would just mock Kraven, right?
The one I liked was, you've got like the tooth, you've got the tombstone, you have a goblin glider, not even like an important one, just a glider. I feel like there are many of those, right? Like there's been several.
Oh yeah,
goblins.
they like hand them out like candy.
Yeah, I don't know. It's whatever. I'm kind of curious where Wolverine lost his hand. Maybe you guys could fill me in on that. But I don't know.
And apparently that hand has adamantium in it.
Yeah.
Some people were speculating if it was an Old Man Logan hand, because he does get a hand cut off at one point in his run. And it was in Madripoor, I believe, if anybody has chosen to retain the memories of reading that run.
I have not.
No one does.
Which run was that? Was that Brisson? Or?
I think it was the Brisson half after Lemire stepped away. Yeah.
But the thing is, though, I feel like if we are going by that Percy just being goofy in the story and then having like an old-timey comic, wonder back into it, these artifacts make sense in that sense, because these are just random stuff that you just throw in versus a hand you can grow your own Wolverine from. But seriously, why didn't a Wolverine grow out of that? How did that work? How do you stop?
Where does it end?
Where does it end?
Because it doesn't have the other half to combine.
Oh, that's right. Right. There is no one just carrying it.
So we end. Oh, go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
I was just going to say we end here with Wolverine basically saying, this is unacceptable, that and break him free. But before that, the point that's made is that Maverick is so much more functional than all of these other things that are for sale here, because Maverick is a mutant, and a mutant is a key to if you want to with Krakoa.
Cool.
And so if you want to get in on all this Krakoan nonsense, you want a key. And what better key than a covert op agent who's been brainwashed and also can get you through a gate? I think this is a good example of an outgrowth of X-Force plots, which is seeing mutants commodified in a way that can be weaponized against Krakoa, which I don't think we've seen in a lot of the other titles, but we certainly have seen in X-Force. Thoughts on that?
This is one part I liked, and that's why the point have clause, because that was very I thought that was like a very scary threat that not enough, it's not being talked about enough. It just kind of keep happening in X-Force fight of the issue kind of way, but rather than the implication. But at the same time, I was also thinking, how are they going to do it? Like everyone hold on to Maverick and we're just walking through the gate. I thought that
they can't. That's not how the gates work, right? They would just bounce off it like cake.
Yeah. So it's like
it was like a false it's a false advertisement in a way. But at the same time, his design looked a lot like Deathstroke from DC. Because of the gold, the way he was, it was, I don't know, it just reminded me of that in a way. But I was like, but I was kind of freaking out about the brainwashed human being sold.
Well, before even, there's also this scene where the Xeno guy, the man with the peacock tattoo, picked up the bloody handkerchief that with Wolverine's blood on it. So I don't know what he's going to do with it, but it is also established in Wolverine 1 that Wolverine's healing power will not last when his blood exits him. Like his body doesn't just produce it; his body is also the vault. So in some ways, they got his DNA, but then they could have gotten his DNA anywhere. He's just probably shedding hair all the time, all over the place. So
maybe
Tyler gets it.
Yeah, this is just I'm just looking at that page where he picks up the handkerchief. Wolverine totally just took King Ping's handkerchief and threw it on the ground.
I know,
kind of rude. He gave you that out of friendship, and you just tossed it on the ground. Anyway,
yeah, he's like, I know who you are, and then he's like,
you can afford it.
So it ends with Wolverine proving that he's bad for these covert operations, basically jumping up on stage, like my story about me at my wedding in the last issue, and stopping the proceedings. And of course, he's in this huge room of supervillains, and Maverick may or may not be on his side, but he's trying to break him out, and that's where we leave things. And that's where we leave things. So does anybody else have a small thing, such as the tissue or handkerchief, that they want to point out before we call it a day on Wolverine number 9?
I know I said earlier that there were no painful lines in this, but at the very end in the data page, Wolverine says, talking about Maverick, but like every pretty boy, he only cares about one person, and that's numero uno. I can't see Wolverine saying numero uno. Is that just me? Like,
I can't see him saying pretty boy. Did you feel offended? Was he coming for you as a pretty boy? What was the...
Hey, that's between me and my therapist, and we're going to figure that out later.
I thought you were going to say it's between you and your mirror, and you were going to work it out later, but that's fine. Therapists too.
I'm secure. Yeah, no, it's I don't know why. I don't know why Percy writes them like this. I was feeling so good about this issue not having, and I got back to this data page. And I'm like, right, no, you can't help yourself. Like, I don't know. I don't want to be mean though.
To that point, because I listened to you guys talking about X-Force and how, like, weird, like, toxic mess. Like, this is also another one that from the whole last data page, like, you can't trust him with your wife, but you can trust him with your life, kind of deal.
Yeah, like, what is it supposed to mean?
Bro, that's something you find on a bumper sticker on the back of a truck. Like, that's...
And you're from Florida, so you know.
Dude.
Right? Like,
oh my God.
That's what teaming with it. And I'm like, so then that's actually got me thinking, look how many friends I have who are like that, not necessarily, still your spouse, but you can trust them with your life. I'm like, that's a weird thing. And then,
it's insane.
Then I was like, I don't know, this is just a very weird thing that men use to kind of show camaraderie, which is like, or camaraderie, like how do you say it?
I have so many friends who are the opposite, where I was like, I would not trust them with my physical safety for a second, but they're really, I love when they hang out with my family.
I love your emotional intelligence, but we're not going to fight together. We're not going to win.
Weird. I was like, and then, it breaks my heart because he did wrote a good Wolverine in the 2 podcasts that he wrote. And then I'm like, who is that Percy? This is not good.
So for this week's lot of books, there's another cringe in this issue when they pull out the Krakoa, wire from his ear.
Yeah.
It was like,
yeah, that's gross.
It's gross, but I thought it was really well drawn.
Yeah,
I just laughed because I was picturing the other side of that scene, which I wish we got, which was kind of like Sage with like the feedback, like in the movie when they step on the bug from somebody's ear, and then the person in the van is like, oh, I was just in my head picturing Sage and Forge like around the computer going, and that to me was funny even without seeing it. So I thought I think Cooper does a lot of things here where he draws with efficiency, especially in the flashbacks, but a lot of the times, like in the auction too, where he doesn't need to put in every little detail. He puts the right details to catch your eye. I think the earwax was a point of that. I think the thing with Kingpin noticing Wolverine walking past was a point of that. I think the other Wolverine at the bar, like Kubert really is one of these thoughtful artists who's like, and who knows, maybe Percy scripted all 3 of those things exactly how they are. But I've read enough Adam Kubert where I think he actually is pretty clever in how he frames things to make sure that you can see that. And the thing that I would pull out is, as dull as these auction type things are, I like when something else in the auction gets used against one of the other people in the auction. That's like the one little piece of joy. And when the old cowboy dude picks up the gravity gloves, A, I just got a little chuckle, but B, Cooper draws this great panel where he's like super foreshortened and it's the gloves really close to the panel, and almost looks like he's flying, but his feet are just really, really tiny on the floor below because of how heavy the perspective. And I'm like, but even as tiny as these feet are, he has these cowboy boots with gold tips. And I'm like, that is clever. And whether Percy put it in the script, have him be totally shrunken so you can barely see the boots, but have them be cowboy boots with gold tips, or if Cooper just did that on his own, like, this is what I appreciate in art, in an issue. This is the stuff that catches my eye.
But I just want to say on a parting, I did not know that was actually a bug, a year thing. I thought that was actually came up.
Just straight up earwax.
I actually accepted it just like, it's Wolverine. His staying dirty. I was like, I just accepted it. And I was so sleepy, guys, when I read it last night. And I'm like, oh no. And then now I'm looking back. I'm like, it was a bug all along.
So you read that scene as two bodyguards had a really bad day on the job because they had to go pluck out someone's earwax.
Yeah, they were just grooming him. So it's like when you have to wear a suit jacket to get into a restaurant. No earwax.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much for tuning in for this incredibly highbrow discussion for Wolverine #9. If you're looking for our equally highbrow discussions of all of the other X-Men comic books this week, check out other episodes of This Week in X. So for myself, for Tyler, Fariha, and Harry, we're so happy that you joined us for this because we really think that X-Men is better when, Fariha,
it's read together.
That's right. And so we're happy that you're reading it with us. And until we see you again next time, we hope that you are well.